There is a question that appears deceptively simple, yet carries within it one of the most profound paradoxes of human existence. Why does a man work his entire life and still die poor? Not because he was lazy, not because he lacked intelligence, but because he was never once asked the right question. Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad is not merely a book about money. It is a precise dissection of the way human beings think about wealth, the invisible architecture of belief that determines, long before any financial decision is made, whether a person will accumulate assets or spend a lifetime serving debt. This video is not a summary. It is a philosophical reading of what the book is actually saying beneath the surface. The book opens with a scene that is simple in appearance, but profound in implication. A boy grows up between two men. His biological father, educated, academically credentialed, employed by the government, a firm believer that education is the path to success. And his friend's father, a man who never finished school, yet became one of the wealthiest individuals in Hawaii. If we pause here philosophically, we must ask, what do these two men actually represent? They are not merely two people with different bank accounts. They represent two fundamentally different epistemic systems, two entirely distinct frameworks for interpreting risk, security, and the meaning of a good life. The poor dad sees security in the stable paycheck. The rich dad sees security in owning assets that generate income while he sleeps. And the real philosophical question is not, which one is right? The deeper question is, where did each man's conviction come from, and who taught it to him? Kiyosaki introduces what can be philosophically described as conditioned consciousness, the idea that most people do not choose their relationship with money. They inherit it. They inherit it from their parents, their schools, their culture, and they grow up treating these inherited beliefs as objective truths, when in reality they are nothing more than acquired programming. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant spoke of transcendental constraints, the limits we cannot see precisely because we see through them, not at them. Our financial beliefs operate the same way. They are the lens, not the object. And most people never think to examine the lens itself. Consider the difference between two sentences. The poor dad says, "I can't afford this." The rich dad says, "How can I afford this?" The distinction is not grammatical, it is philosophical. The first sentence closes the mind. It fixes reality as immovable. The second sentence opens inquiry. It treats reality as something to be engaged, challenged, and ultimately reshaped. Kiyosaki argues that fear and greed are the twin engines driving most financial decisions. Fear of poverty keeps people working. The desire for a higher salary keeps them loyal to a system that may never truly serve them. And trapped between these two forces, an entire human life can pass without a single moment of genuine financial self-examination. Kiyosaki offers a framework that appears accounting-like on the surface, but carries genuine philosophical weight beneath it. An asset is anything that puts money into your pocket. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. With this simple redefinition, much of what society taught us to pursue begins to unravel. The house you live in? A liability. The car you finance? A liability. A university degree funded by debt? It can be a liability. But what is philosophically striking, and here Kiyosaki brushes against existentialist thought, is that most people work extraordinarily hard to acquire more liabilities and call it success. They buy a larger home, a newer car, a more expensive holiday. Each time, they feel the sensation of achievement. Each time, they return to zero, more dependent than before, on the next paycheck. This cycle is not accidental. It is, in a very real sense, by design. The system rewards consumption, not ownership. It educates people to be productive employees, not independent asset holders. And those who never question this design will spend their lives funding the assets of those who do. Kiyosaki introduces what he calls the cash flow quadrant, one of the most sociologically and philosophically rich ideas in the book. The quadrant contains 4 categories: the employee, the self-employed, the investor, and the business owner. The fundamental distinction between the left side and the right side of the quadrant is not income, it is the relationship with time. The employee and the self-employed exchange their time directly for money. The moment they stop working, the income stops. The investor and the business owner, however, have built systems, mechanisms that generate value in their absence. And here the book touches a genuinely existential question. Do you own your time, or does your time belong to someone else? True freedom, in Kiyosaki's framework, is not a high salary. It is the moment when your income is no longer contingent on your physical presence, when the assets you have built continue to work, whether you are awake or asleep, present or absent. This is what he means when he says, "The rich don't work for money." An honest reading demands that we stand before this book with a critical eye. Kiyosaki presents a model that feels comprehensive, yet it rests on an implicit assumption that many readers absorb without noticing, that financial freedom is a universal human goal, and that anyone who fails to pursue it suffers from a deficiency in awareness. But the philosopher might ask, must every human being pursue asset ownership? What are the values that cannot be measured in capital? The teacher who transforms generations, the physician in a remote village, the artist who enriches the human spirit without enriching themselves financially. In his enthusiasm for wealth, Kiyosaki at times comes dangerously close to reducing the human being to his economic dimension. And that reduction, taken without careful reflection, is a philosophical error of considerable consequence. Furthermore, the book was written from a specific context, America, in a specific era, with a specific set of market conditions. The pathways Kiyosaki describes are real, but they are not universally accessible. Structural inequality, systemic barriers, and the absence of inherited capital mean that for many people, the distance between reading this book and living its principles is far greater than Kiyosaki acknowledges. The book gives you powerful tools, but it does not answer the deeper question, why do you want wealth? And what will you do with your freedom once you have it? In the end, Rich Dad Poor Dad is not a book that teaches you how to invest. It is an invitation to something far more difficult and far more consequential, an invitation to think about the way you think, to examine the beliefs governing your financial decisions, to ask with genuine honesty whether the convictions you hold about money were ever truly chosen, or whether they were quietly, gradually installed in you over the course of a lifetime. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Kiyosaki, in his own way, says something parallel. An unexamined relationship with money is not worth maintaining. The question this book ultimately leaves you with is not, how much do you have? It is, how do you think? And who taught you to think that way? That is where the real journey begins. Not in the market, not in an investment portfolio, but in the quiet, uncomfortable, necessary act of looking at your own mind and deciding, perhaps for the first time, what you actually believe. And that is the most radical financial advice anyone has ever given.